Come, let us recite from the Great Garuda in flight, and then savor effortless meditation. Let's explore the 27th passage. Together, let's recite, especially if you're joining me on the Tube app. Searching for the true nature by depending on the true nature would be like the sky searching for the sky. And expecting to discover the true nature, Expecting to discover their true nature by depending on others would be similar to extinguishing fire with fire. These are very difficult things to do, indeed. Good evening. If you wish to recite along with me, you're welcome to join me on the Tube app. Otherwise, I will do my best to explain this passage. Searching for the true nature. So true nature here is a reference to emptiness. So what does emptiness mean? Excellent question. To explain that, I'm going to switch screens to some visual aids. Both this teaching text and the visual aids are available for free download as PDFs. That's the heater, for I must cook my back. What are we having? Baked Joe. Okay, so I'm going over here. So what is meant? So as we relax into our exhalation, that which we noticed during our previous inhalation could fleetingly feel as non-graspable as a vast empty void. You can't have this many as's without this being a simile, which is a figure of speech. Now, a simile is only as powerful as it is relatable, so we have to ask the question, what? What is a real-world example of a non-graspable, vast, empty void? How about the illusion of the infinite azure sky on a bright and beautiful cloudless morn, which although could look tantalizing to the eye, feels non-graspable to the hand? That's right, folks, you got it. Speak to the hand. So this is a very, very small view. I want to jump back a little bit so we can get some context. Every moment we have a choice. Do we actively compete against our own autonomic nervous system, or do we passively and gently cooperate with it so that we might utilize the entirety of our mind in the most sustainable way? Let's play devil's advocate. Let's play devil's advocate. What's wrong with actively competing against our autonomic nervous system? Well, we do that by actively focusing and actively analyzing. This doing so, overworking our medial and dorsolateral and prefrontal cortex, induces us to automatically present with symptoms of depression, and nobody wants that. To the point that we begin triggering our amygdala, which functions as the seat of both anxiety and aggression. Nobody wants that either. So the reward, the payoff for actively competing against our own autonomic nervous system is a pretty sucky life. Now, this is a popular thing to do. Sturgeon's law reminds us that 90% of everything sucks, and that suckiness, looks like people being rigid and fearful and superstitious and controlling and elitist and cryptic and competitive and cruel, and that's the life. That's the reward, if it could be called such a thing, of actively competing against our own autonomic nervous system. Well, what is our autonomic nervous system? I'll explain it to you in parts. Let's start with the first part. Every time we inhale, whether we know it or not, we have evolved to automatically access the middle bit of our spinal cord, known as the sympathetic nervous system. It has evolved to help us to notice in a very special way. To help us to notice vulnerably, passively, viscerally, randomly, and fleetingly, which is completely opposite of being rigid and large and in charge. Captain Over the Top at your service. It helps us to notice mind's antics of perception. Seeing, hearing, feeling, tasting, smelling, and the like, including the full spectrum of human emotions, intentions, thoughts, memories, and imaginings. So remember, this is a passive process. It's not active. We're not picking and choosing what to reach for and what to shove away. We're being completely vulnerable to whatever the present moment foists upon us, be it external or internal, physical or mental, pleasurable or painful, interesting or boring, glorious or grotesque. But what do we do with that which we notice? That brings us to our exhalation. Every time we exhale, we have evolved to automatically access the bottom bit and the top bit of that same spinal cord. This is known as our parasympathetic nervous system, and it has evolved to help us to physically relax and mentally release. To such a degree that which we noticed during our previous inhalation could fleetingly feel less stressful, less permanent, and less defining. We go from being angry to feeling angry. Now that might sound like picayune. If you like the Sopranos, you recognize that phrase. That might sound like picayune, but it's not. The less we identify with what's going on, the more flexible we are, the more resilient we are, the more happy-go-lucky we get to be. So now that we understand our autonomic nervous system, and yes, let's talk about some benefits. In addition to giving us peace, in addition to calming our amygdala, the seat of both anxiety and aggression, it gently stimulates our anterior cingulate gyrus, which functions as the hub of our mirror neurons, the seat of empathy, the root of both compassion and love. Now that we understand how this whole thing works, the idea of emptiness makes more sense. Emptiness is just a figure of speech to explain the process of watching and resting in harmony with our inhalation and our exhalation. So we have been so conditioned to have to strain and strive that it can be really jarring to think that this is easy, and yet it is. we are already wired to watch and rest. We don't have to force it. Then what is our role in the process? Simple. Our role is to passively cooperate. Now that is easier said than done. So here's the trick. Every time we feel our chest swell with oxygen, we silently and mentally recite the verb watch to remind us not to hide from what's going on, whether it be pleasurable, painful, interesting, or boring. Every time we feel our chest begin to subtly sink as we exhale, silently and mentally we can recite the verb rest. When I was a little boy, me and my little sister would play a game on Saturday nights when our parents would be out having a date and we'd be home alone. We'd take turns playing the Jewish mother. And when it was my turn to be the Jewish mother, I would stand my sister right in front of the easy chair, and I'd say, "Oh, you worked too hard. Take a load off," and I'd throw her into the easy chair. Then I'd say, "Oh, you're just laying about? You lazy good for nothing." Then I'd push the easy chair up, and she'd go flying. And then it would be my turn, and then it'd be her turn to be the Jewish mother. And we'd go back and forth like that, and we thought it was just the height of comedic genius. The Mount Everest of comedy, if you will. So, we were kids. Whether there are external people or inner voices, resting is difficult for us. Even in spiritual circles. Remember we talked about how Sturgeon's Law reminds us that 90% of everything sucks? Well, in Buddhism, 90% of the participants are involved in institutional Buddhism. What a scary word. Dun, dun, dun. Institutional Buddhism. And it's all about, being rigid, fearful, superstitious, controlling, elitist, cryptic, competitive, cruel. Yuck. And so these guys, they're so conditioned for things to be difficult and hard that they even have these weird, outlandish, fantastic ideas of what enlightenment is, thinking that, oh, yes, when I'm enlightened, I won't feel emotional pain, I won't feel physical pain, I'll have nothing but peace and bliss and wisdom and love. However, that is not what the Buddha taught. Buddha taught that enlightenment is as easy as mastering the Eightfold Path to the point of practicing it spontaneously, habitually, easily, and effectively. That's all it is. We still feel the full spectrum. We still experience the full spectrum of human perceptions, emotions, intentions, thoughts, memories, and imaginings. We still feel a full spectrum of the external, the internal, the physical, the mental, the pleasurable, the painful, the interesting, the boring, the glorious, and the grotesque. But now we are equipped to process it, to process our present stuff, to process the stuff that we are anticipating, because that's what we're wired to do, and to even process the filthy McNasties of our own personal past. So now, allow me to blow your mind a little bit more. 8 steps seems a trifle like a lot, because we only have 4 fingers and 1 thumb on each hand. We've got 8 things to do? No, we don't. Check this out. Simply by regularly playing with mindfulness and meditation, perhaps once every 12 hours or so, we find ourselves automatically practicing the view that notices change. We find ourselves automatically experiencing kind intention, kind communication, kind conduct, kind commerce. We find that our choices, utterances, and deeds automatically flow with the effortless effort of centered spontaneity. Simply because we've pulled our head out of the warm, dark place we sometimes keep it and passively cooperate with our tendencies to notice and relax. Now, let's return to this evening's opening text. Now that we've thoroughly played with the visual aids. Think I'm getting cooked here pretty good. Searching for the true nature by depending on the true nature would be like the sky searching for the sky. You know, like if we could have a conversation with a fish and we'd ask the fish, hey, man, how's the water? And the fish would say, what's water? Emptiness is something we experience, whether we know it or not, whether we want to or not, during every exhalation. Emptiness, once again, is just a figure of speech for the fleeting non-graspability that presents itself every time we relax in harmony with our exhalation. And expecting to discover the true nature by depending on others would be similar to extinguishing fire with fire. Now, they don't mean once again, this is a hyperbolic statement, because we both know that if there's a forest fire, you create you therapeutically burn a part of the forest, so that when the fire gets there, it has no fuel and it extinguishes. That's not what they're talking about here. They're talking about seeing there's a fire, and instead of you think you're reaching for water, but you're really reaching for a lighter fluid, and you throw it on the gas. You throw it on the flames, and you wonder why you lose your eyebrows. Fundamentalism for fun and profit. There's always going to be scallywags who will indulge their rigid, fearful, controlling, elitist nature to make themselves empowered by disempowering others. Tibet is a prime example of this. It was a deeply capitalistic, feudalistic society where if you wanted to go to a monastery, you had to pay rent. And if you wanted to get advanced training, you had to pay for it. And you couldn't go on a 3-year retreat unless you could pay for that. And so it became something reserved for the children of the upper class. And for people of the so-called lower class, they would be faced with homelessness and exposure and starvation if they wanted to get training, if they could find it. So that's really, really ugly. And there are lots of people who are happy to disempower us and say, well, then it's like in this mustache twirling villainous thing. Well, you must bow to me and give me your wealth and give me your crotch, and I'll do all these wild things so that I give you these special trainings. And that just multiplies neurosis. I know, I've been there, I've done that. I've put my blind faith in teachers who were either foolish or malicious and could not deliver what they promised or would not deliver what they promised. And my experience is not unique. The founder of Dzogchen, this great Buddhist reformer, Prahe Vajra, is saying the same thing. You don't need to chant my name. You don't need to bow down before a picture of me. You don't need to empty your bank account and send it to me. You've already received my instructions. All you got to do is apply them. And when you have questions, type them in the chat window. I'll be happy to answer them. Assuming those questions are, or about meditation and philosophy, and not about how often the tangerine in chief changes his depends. So these are very difficult things to do indeed. So if we hyper intellectualize emptiness, it ain't gonna work. If we get superstitious with the teachings or superstitious with the teachers, it ain't gonna work. All we gotta do is passively cooperate with our autonomic nervous system, and everything will take care of itself. Having completed our opening lesson, we could now shift gears. It is Ahsoka Tano Thursday evening. Let us meditate like a Jedi after about 30 seconds of housekeeping. This is the Dzogchen Sende Lama Jigme Gyatso of the Buddha Joy Meditation School. For more than 30 years, I've harnessed my autistic special interests as well as my ADHD hyperfocus to spend about 8 hours a day, almost every day, studying, practicing, mastering, and reverse engineering the teachings and techniques of each school of meditation so that I can become your personal, nerdy, neurodivergent guide to nirvana. Welcome, my friends, to Meditate Like a Jedi, which is made possible due to the generosity of viewers just like you. So, here's the thing. You've already received the teachings. There's no secret handshake. There's no secret blessing. You have everything you need. If you like my silliness and you want to help me out, you're welcome to. If you can't afford to, don't worry about it. All my downloads, all my videos, all my blatherings are free. So you're good to go. No sweat. Let's spend the remainder of this evening's live stream in mindfulness and meditation, silently and mentally reciting the verb watch every time we inhale, and silently and mentally reciting the verb rest every time we exhale. Or to put it another way, every time our chest swells, watch. Every time it sinks, rest. You're not in this alone. The moment you have a specific question about Buddhist meditation or philosophy, type your question in great detail. For I tend to check for questions about every 5 minutes or so. L'chaim. Ouch, ouch. If you are prone to arthritis like I am, I encourage you to adjust your legs every 15 minutes or so. And you might say, dude, if you're arthritis, sit on the couch. Here's the funny thing about aging, kids. Everything hurts. You just kind of swap out one pain for another. It's something to look forward to, isn't it? Oh, yes. You might find it helpful to rest the great knuckle at the base of your right middle finger upon the tip of your left middle finger, palms up in your lap. You don't have to, but you might find it helpful. Oh, by the way, quick tip. After an hour of live streaming, my brain turns into tapioca. So if you got a question, don't wait till the end. Write it, type it immediately. So our task is to be less like the Big Lebowski and more like the dude. So meditation is essentially savoring a mental margarita. Or in this case, a white Russian. You have taken your first step into a much larger world. If you feel that I have earned it, you could give this live stream a thumbs up. You could even help support this channel. Oopsie, wrong button. In approximately 11 hours, I would very much like to return to lead tomorrow's morning meditation class and group practice. And if you are as geeky as me, may the Force be with you always.